Hey, this thing's on.
Okay, we'll call the meeting to order. We'll take the roll now.
Councilman Duper.
Present.
Councilman Daly.
Here.
Councilman Leonard.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tempore Popescu.
Here.
And Mayor Rigsby.
Here.
All present.
Okay, would you please stand for the invocation and the Pledge of Allegiance? Let's bow our heads. Dear Lord, we thank you once again for your leadership of our fine community, our community of faith, our community of civic pride. We ask that you be with us in our discussions of the city's operations tonight. We ask that you be with the families of those injured in recent events. And we ask that you bring blessing on Southern California, which definitely needs it tonight. In Jesus' name, amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Are there any items to be added or deleted?
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor. I would like to delete item number 10 from the agenda tonight.
Okay. Are there any comments from the public on any items not on the agenda? Looks like we have one from Sarah. Is it Benoit or Benoit?
Either way, I'll answer to
Okay.
either. Good afternoon. My name is Sarah Benoit, and I'm Congressman Gary Miller's new district representative for the city of Loma Linda. I just want to come by and introduce myself and make sure you had our current contact information. Our new office phone number is 909-980-1492. I also want to make sure that you're aware we're here to assist your constituents with any issues involving federal agencies. That would be everything from the IRS to the Nuclear Regulatory Commission. So if your constituents have a problem with the federal government or concern, please feel free to pass along our information. In addition, we're also looking for qualified interns. So if I can leave some information here with the city clerk, I'd be happy to pass that on. And please have any high school or college-age students who are interested in learning about the federal government contact our office. Thank you.
Thank you. The other requests are for items on the agenda. Is there anyone who'd like to speak on any item not on the agenda? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to our scheduled items. We have a public hearing. Community Development Block Grants. Prioritization, Public Works.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just like every year, the city received funding from the county community block grant, and for next fiscal year, 2013-2014, we will receive a total of $102,319, of which the city can allocate up to 15% for the public services activity. For the next fiscal year, staff recommend that we help fund the county library, the San Bernardino County Library, the San Bernardino County Library for our branch right here for $10,000, and our inland temporary home for the remaining $5,348. For our remaining fund will be used for the pavement rehabilitation on Park Avenue, also the alleyway behind the Park Avenue, and some sidewalk along Meade Street from Mountain View to meet court. We have some funding that left over from this fiscal year that we'll use for the next fiscal year. And we have a member from the library and from the Inland Temporary Home here to answer your question.
Okay. So can we hear from Andrea Hinterbickler?
Good evening. My name is Andrea, and I'm from Inland Temporary Homes. I'm the program director, and I'm here on behalf of Jeff Little. We are a homeless shelter for families with children. We have a 90-day homeless shelter and a 2-year transitional housing. During 2012, we served over 47 adults and 80 children to 38 families total. 13 of those families found permanent housing. We offer case management. We have a Learning Express program for our children. We have a mental health program and an employment program in hopes that all of our clients receive permanent housing. Any questions?
How did you dig yourself out of your economic turmoil of last?
I actually have Melissa O'Connell. She's our financial advisor. I can have her come up if that's okay.
Good evening. How is everybody? Basically, we've been doing, doing quite well. I have some figures. ITH's working capital as of 12/31/2012 is a negative $47,839. It is an improvement of $65,968 over 2011. So we were quite successful since Jeff Little came on board in June of 2011. We've been really working hard to manage our expenses, cut costs wherever possible, and I feel that 2013 is going to just even improve even more. So I think we're doing quite well. It's just a matter of continuing our services and helping the homeless. Any questions?
Not a question, just a commendation. I mean, this is an important work that you folk do in tough economic times, and it's a real community service.
Thank you so
I
much.
commend you for that.
Anything
Okay.
else?
I think that's it then.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next is Stan Sewell from the library.
Thank you very much. My name is Stan Sewell. I'm the branch manager at the Loma Linda Branch Library. We're located next door at 25581 Barton Road. I will keep my comments brief. I appreciate the staff's recommendation, and I'll try not to put my foot in my mouth too much. I'd like to thank the mayor and the staff and also the council for their support over the years. I'd like to single out Councilmember Lenart. His wife is one of our literacy tutors. She's been helping there for years, if not decades. Recently, I'd like to comment about one of her students. She's been helping her with her literacy skills, and this student has become an emergency room nurse, has got an improvement in her job, and unfortunately has moved away, though. But she's taken on another student, so ongoing. We have 9 literacy students at this time. We have 8 tutors helping us. We also offer computer classes each week, Tuesdays at 1 o'clock, that are free to the public. We have a Homework Buddies program that we have students in the high school assist the elementary school students with their homework. We also offer the Storytime and Early Learning program for children Wednesdays at 11 o'clock. What we do with the funds that we request is we keep the library open Wednesdays, and that goes for staffing as well as materials. And I would be happy to entertain any questions or comments you may have.
You mentioned a program that helps students with their homework.
Yes, it's called the Homework Buddies program. It's held in the afternoons.
And who are the folks who actually help the kids?
These are usually students from the local schools and the high school. And to graduate, they need to do so many community service hours. And so we help them, they help us.
And how often do you find kids from our community utilizing that program?
We have kids there every day, pretty much, Monday through Thursday. So Pretty much every day we have somebody there, and we have kids using the program.
And how do the kids in our community know about it to utilize it?
We publicize it several ways. As soon as you come into the branch, we have a big poster that describes it. We also put it on our newsletter. It goes over our web site, and we have something that goes on the city's electronic billboard. Thank you.
Well, thank you.
Have you ever marketed it directly to the schools in the community?
The principal, O'Neill, he is aware of the program, and the academy is aware of it too.
Okay. Got thumbs up, so that'll be all. Thanks.
Thank you very much.
So we have to have a public hearing, so are there any other applicants? Looks like we apparently discouraged somebody this year. I'll open the public hearing. Is there anybody from the public who would like to speak on this topic? Seeing no takers, I'll close the public hearing. And what's the pleasure of the council?
I'll second it.
Okay. Any discussion? Any opposition? Hearing none, it is approved. Congratulations. Now we'll move to item 2, Council Bill R-2013-01, start of a new year. Costs of the weed abatement program. Fire Department.
Yes, it's that time of year again. Fire Marshal and our inspector are here to present the report.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and Council. My pleasure tonight to give you a quick report, if I could, on this year's fall weed abatement program. I ask for your approval of the report and ultimately to adopt the resolution which would establish the liens on the affected properties. Briefly, real quick, just give you an overview of, you're very familiar with what we do, but let me just give you an overview of this last fall's program. September 4th, we started out by evaluating upwards of 450 parcels within the city. Of those 450 parcels, 180 of them needed to have some type of abatement completed on them. All the owners of record were sent notices to clean their properties. Most of them did. We ultimately ended up with 16 parcels that needed to have work on them done by the city contractor. Then those 16 were sent invoices on January 3rd of this year and had until January 22nd to make payments, although we actually allowed them up until February 11th to bring in any payments. And on your packet, you'll have a list of the 10 properties that decided not to make that payment, usually by their own volition. They like to use this process. But this year we have 10, and I'm asking that you adopt this resolution to allow those to go to the county tax rolls.
I know we do this every year, but just a question. In adopting this resolution, it basically means that we're placing a lien on their properties? So if these folks choose to do so, then when do they plan on paying these fees?
When the property is ultimately, let's say when we get all of us get our tax bills at the end of the year or twice a year when we pay them, that'll be on there in the form of an assessment. If they pay it, they pay it. If they don't,
so it gets added to their tax bill.
Right. But if they don't pay it, ultimately it would be a lien on that property. If I got this correct, it'll be a lien on this property, and then the city would recoup their costs. It could be a wait, but once it finally was sold, the property was sold, before it could be cleared, the city would have to be paid.
So basically what this does is place this bill on their next property tax bill.
Right.
I see.
And as I've said, many of the property owners that ultimately go this round, and usually we have somewhere between 10 and 20 each time, they choose to do it this way.
And they do it this way because this is still cheaper than them actually trying to do it?
Yeah, when you think about it, really our cost and the cost that the city contract we have is really very reasonable. Imagine if you have a property and you didn't want to use that one and you had to go through the Yellow Pages and called somebody from the county to show up with his tractor and his discs and everything. I'm sure it would be more than what our city contractor charges.
Thank you.
I'm wondering if there's a tax incentive to do this, because you could write off the as a tax bill?
I'm not that good with taxes, I don't know. It may be.
I wonder if that would be the case. If so, then they should all do it.
That means we all stop paying our lawns and we just get billed for paying our lawns once a year.
Any questions? More questions?
Just out of curiosity, how many of these would you say are annual offenders?
Well, I think, like I said, we do upwards of 450. It's surprising. You wouldn't think there's that many properties, but upwards of 450. And on average, we end up with that 200 number that goes out to people that, hey, you need to clean your property up. Most of them do. And in range, like I said, somewhere between 30
I'm saying,
and 40.
are some of these names showing up every year?
Oh, yeah.
That's what I assumed.
Yeah.
I thought I recognized a few. What's that?
I recognize 2 or 3 times.
Yeah.
I recognize them because I know them. This must be a good way to do it. Do we know if any of prior liens have paid, or?
Do they pretty much they get paid? Or?
Yeah, sounds like this system works.
Well, it's twofold. These will go on the tax bills, and we have given them until the end of February to actually pay. So if they don't pay by the end of February, come August, they'll go on the tax bills, and then we will also file a lien against the properties, which is recorded. So if they go to refinance their property or to sell their property and have not paid it on their property tax bill, they will have to pay through escrow, and then we will recoup at that time. And then, of course, we do release that lien once paid.
Good. Any other comments?
So I take it that once they pay the tax bill, the county then sends us the amount to cover it? So that means if they pay the county as part of their tax bill, then the county sends us a check?
Yeah, that's how it works, yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so what we're looking for is a motion to approve. This is a public hearing, too? It doesn't say so on the agenda. It is? Okay, then I'll open a public hearing. Is there anyone who'd like to talk about this? I don't see anybody. You close the public hearing, and now the council can move the bill.
I will move Council Bill R-2013-01.
Second.
Okay, any discussion? Any opposition? Looks like it's approved.
Thank you.
Good work. Okay, the consent calendar.
If nobody pulls an item, I'll move it.
Just item 10 was removed. Okay, there's a motion.
I'll second.
Is there any discussion? So is this a welcome to the Glen Ranges? Okay. Is there any opposition to the motion? Hearing none, it's approved. Welcome. No old business. We have new business, introduction of code enforcement receivership program. City manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We have been talking about court enforcement for a little while, and we're trying to look for an option or a way that we can help clean up the properties, and we have hired our code enforcement consultant, Mr. John Van Doren, to help us with the receivership program, and he would like to introduce this program to all of you, and you can give us the direction how you feel about the city start with this program for our court enforcement. Thank you.
Good.
Mayor Rigsby, council members, and staff, good evening, and thank you for the opportunity to identify a growing problem in the city and to present a practical, budget-neutral solution. First, I'm going to go over what many of you might be aware of, called the broken window syndrome. Things happen, things are ignored, people get the idea it's okay, property values go down. This broken window syndrome concept is taken from a study of housing projects in New York and their steady decline. The slide before you reflects some of the more basic consequences of that decline. Hang on while we get synced up for you, I'm sorry. It says connecting. I trust that it is. Timed out. Send the presenter view. Sorry for delaying your time. City manager and I previewed this about 4:30, and we were synced up okay, but sure. From high tech to low tech, we will get the slides up with you in just a moment. Once again, according to the study that was taken in New York, it stands to reason that if I see that no one cares about the property around me, it may encourage me to stop taking care of my own property because it's not likely I'll suffer any consequences personally. So then when properties go vacant due to foreclosure, the vacuum is filled with even less motivated elements. Now you're reading my notes. Thank you. We're getting close. Here we go. Okay. Some of the consequences of neglect are all around us, but it starts with something as simple as the broken window, then landscape, fences, driveways where they exist. Junk is dumped onto vacant property, sometimes even city property gets dumped on. Any vacant property is an attractive nuisance to that end. So undesirable elements then move into what used to be a nice neighborhood, property values to continue to decline. Property neglect almost always involves violations of the Loma Linda Municipal Code, and often the Health and Safety Building Code, the Vehicle Code, and even the Penal Code. We all know people that have been brought into distress with today's economy, and so we've seen this happen in our own neighborhoods, perhaps. This proposed receivership program is intended to be used only as a last resort on non-owner-occupied or vacant dwellings or parcels. So we don't intend to displace any Loma Linda residents unless something's going on, someone's life is in jeopardy, or there is a real threat of injury to first responders. So we have properties that are in need of repair, renovation, demolition. The owners can't do it or don't have the means or the will. So in the past, cities have had to spend their own money to clean up some citizens' properties. So taxpayers at large are paying for the maintenance of the few homeowners who can't or won't clean up their property. And of course, redevelopment that used to be a good tool to market blighted conditions is no longer available to you. So here are current options as we've deployed them in the past. Problems identified, notices are sent to limited success. We can escalate our enforcement actions by issuing civil citations and fines for some compliance. A few times we might have to resort to criminal prosecution with no chance of cost recovery immediately available. Or, in a worst case scenario, we abate the summary at city expense. But Loma Linda, like many cities facing unprecedented budget crises, must make difficult decisions about what services to cut and which to preserve. These challenges are compounded by the decreasing home values, large numbers of foreclosures, and the general financial pinch that increasingly result in the property owner's inability or flat-out refusal to comply with local code enforcement efforts. In response, cities are calling on city attorneys and city prosecutors more frequently to find remedies to address code enforcement issues as cost-effectively as possible. The proposed health and safety receivership program is intended to fulfill this unmet need in Loma Linda's voluntary code compliance operations. So here's the process as you've perhaps experienced it in the past. We bring to you a case that can't be resolved voluntarily. We ask you to declare it in a public meeting, at a public hearing, a public nuisance. And then the City Council, upon recommendation of staff, will order a summary abatement. Then you have to issue another contract for the abatement. Once that's done, it comes back before the City Council for another public hearing to approve the cost of the abatement, wherein the Council may order a lien on the property, and then the City waits for property sales to recover the costs. This is just not practical in today's fiscal climate. And as you can see, it would result in up to 5 public floggings, if you will, 5 public hearings to address a property owner's problems. So coming up right now will be some examples of the need that we have. Some of the most distressed properties I've encountered, you'll see the property condition, some of the more obvious violations, and please note these are all vacant parcels, so no one's living in these investment properties, so no one would have to be relocated. Now this is an important slide. It shows what happened in one location that was illegally occupied and virtually destroyed on the inside by alleged gangbangers and was eventually red tagged as uninhabitable by public safety, and it sits in this condition still. No actual rehabilitation has happened, and nothing is likely to come forward. This is one of 3 properties on Juanita. It was a dilapidated structure years ago. It's a substandard dwelling. And more than 2 years ago, the then new owner agreed in writing to comply with the Building Safety Division to order the demolition of the property, but has never done so, nor has he responded to our recent communications or even civil citations issued in this regard. This is obviously a dilapidated structure and a substandard dwelling. There was a recent fire, and up until then, pertinent structure was actually occupied despite serious building safety violations. This property on Amopolis was acquired, among others, in the county island that was annexed some years ago. So it was an inherited property. The owner had begun a re-roofing effort without a permit and found himself underwater almost literally due to rain damage to the superstructure of the roof and other structural damage. He said he can't afford and cannot qualify for a loan to complete the restoration, and he's also stated he will not restore the garage illegally converted to a bedroom. Here's perhaps one of the worst examples. For budgetary reasons, the city has opted for a reactive rather than a proactive code enforcement program. As such, we're not staffed to go out and look for problems. This property did not get here overnight, but it recently came to the attention of code enforcement when we received a complaint from a concerned neighbor who was afraid the building might fall down on their dwelling. You think?
And this is not all of them.
There are at least 10 or 12 similar properties I can bring to you if you wish, but it's a pretty good example of where receivership might come in handy. Here are the benefits of this proposal. It's more cost effective, it's less time consuming, hardly any upfront costs. We hold the property owner accountable, not the citizens. There's no criminal prosecution, and we don't have to wait for cost recovery. Unlike current practice involving summary abatement at city expense, no specific city council action is required to initiate these procedures. This new program will be implemented only where appropriate, only after all other efforts at voluntary compliance have failed to achieve the desired results. That's internal. Now here are some of the public benefits of the receivership. It's abatement at the expense of the property owner. Any residual costs and attorney's fees are recoverable. Properties are rehabilitated or demolished and cleared for redevelopment. Once restored, properties revert to the original owners. All costs are taken from the property value. Equity positions are not an issue, but rather to be determined by the court and the court-appointed receiver. The process is fairly simple. Code enforcement prepares an affidavit. The city returns an inspection warrant where needed. Now, you note in all the examples I gave you, we don't need another inspection. It's pretty clear what needs to be done. Future cases might warrant an inspection, and if not agreed to, the city attorney can get us an inspection warrant. In any case, the city obtains a court order which appoints a receiver. Yes, sir. I'm sorry. Yes.
Inspection. You're talking building inspection, integrity of structure?
Quite often, when they get to this stage, I will put together a task force myself, fire services, and building safety inspectors, because it usually is way beyond cosmetics. It's a structural deficiency that needs to be addressed foremost. Thank you. So the city recommends to the court the appointment of a receiver. The court, if in agreement, will appoint the receiver, put the property under the receiver's control. The receiver then secures a super priority loan against the property, hires the contractor to restore or demolish the property and return the control of the property to the property owner. The super priority loan takes first place in line at a value the receiver determines sufficient to perform all necessary repairs up to and including demolition, including all required permits, and to reimburse the city for the cost of enforcement up to and including legal fees and court costs. Some of the considerations, the pros, of course, are pretty evident. You eliminate the blight, you do this at the property owner's expense, you improve property values at minimum city expense, you don't prosecute your citizens, and the city council doesn't have to get directly involved in any of the cases. A possible con on this issue is that temporarily control of the property and its assets are assigned to the court-appointed receiver. Once that occurs, the property is under the control of the receiver until it's rehabilitated and returned to him in good order. In some cases, relocation could be required, but none of the properties I have in mind or have shown you and the others that I have at hand are occupied at all. So none of them would require any relocation. If there was to be relocation, it too is at the property owner's expense. In another jurisdiction, it's the property owner himself I had to relocate at his expense. The legal authority does not require any enabling ordinance from the city because the Health and Safety Code already provides for this remedy. So no specific actions require the City Council to exercise its receivership option as yet another tool in achieving voluntary compliance. We don't have to bring the citizens before you in any negative way, as such is now required, for public abatement. Once again, here's our ultimate goal. Property owners get their properties back, fixed at their expense, as well they should cover it, and decades-old problems are solved once and for all. I thank you for consideration. I'd be happy to answer any additional questions council or staff may have.
Now, who initiates this action?
Mayor?
Who initiates the action? We do it
In consultation with my direct supporting director and city attorney, we would proceed on a case-by-case basis, but we initiate the action internally and go to the court and get the order, and it happens.
And how does this accrue to the owner when the owner won't even...
I couldn't hear you, I'm sorry.
How does this cost accrue to the owner when we can't even get them to mow the lawn?
Because the court-appointed receiver, who is an attorney specializing in this practice, orders the work done, pays the contractor, gets it done, and hands the property back to the property owner.
So is this analogous to probate in an intestate?
It's not on. It's in a sense, because in probate you have somebody who's appointed by the court to take charge of the properties. In this case, the court would appoint the receiver who takes charge of the property, who goes out and puts a loan against the property. The loan funds the cost of the receivership, including the receiver's fees, the attorney's fees, the rehabilitation fees, and all of that becomes a number one lien against the property. Then, if the property owner doesn't pay the lien, the property would have to be sold to pay off the loan. So that's why this is, as John was saying, the last remedy that you would seek, because it's fairly extreme as far as the owner of the property.
And
the owner of the property typically, depending upon what equity is in the property, what it's worth, they may lose all of their equity, or if they have no equity, they would lose the property.
Is this the kind of thing where the members of your noble profession churn what's left of the assets? Is that a risk?
There's a risk, and I think what we're looking at here are very extreme cases where it would be justified, but I have seen some abuses over the years in other cities where, in particular, I can think of one situation where an elderly resident had some code violations that had been there for many years, and a receiver was appointed, and tremendous fees and costs were incurred, and that person lost their home and had to move in with relatives. And so the council has to weigh and staff obviously weigh the situation and determine whether the health and safety violations are such that it would justify this fairly extreme remedy, because it is expensive, and the receivers who do this are not cheap. They're professional receivers, not always attorneys necessarily, but people with real estate backgrounds sometimes. The attorney's fees depend upon whether there's opposition, how many court appearances and so forth. The forms themselves are not difficult. I have all the forms. I've done this before on one or two cases where we ended up getting compliance before we had to complete the process, and that sometimes occurs. But this is a tool that, in those extreme cases where the property owner simply cannot or will not remedy the problem, and where the problem is such that the method is justified to resolve the problem, then it's one of those tools that we can use.
Is this tantamount to eminent domain?
Some might say that.
Because it's true condemnation. It's not just economic condemnation or we have a better use in mind. This thing is not suitable for occupation. We're condemning it for occupation.
Yes, it's already condemned for occupation, so we're not
taking that step as part of this process. The fire department or the building department would make that determination in advance, and the city council might also do a public nuisance finding. That's quite often done as a prelude to a receivership. And then the court ultimately decides whether the nature of the violations are severe enough to justify the appointment of a receiver to take charge of the property. Now, there could be a situation where the value of the property is not sufficient to justify a loan for the amount that it would take to rehabilitate the property. But demolition is less expensive, and cleanup is less expensive than restoring, something that could be salvaged. So every case is different, and I do support the program on a case-by-case basis, but there are some practical difficulties, and it does have a pretty severe impact on the property owner, but perhaps justified in certain cases.
If I may add, Mayor, the authorities in state law, but this isn't something I would be able to decide on my own or accomplish on my own or any successor of mine. It would certainly require the support of my director, the city attorney, and the city manager before any effort to go to court. But it would also be incumbent on me to demonstrate that everything else I could do to get voluntary compliance has met with failure on the part of the property owner. So it is definitely a last resort. Probably the only thing that would happen after this is if we don't opt for this and we have a slumlord or somebody who's just a scofflaw, is we go ahead and prosecute them. But in none of the cases I presented to you would that necessarily be the option of choice. It'd be my preference that we just get the property owner to clean up the property voluntarily, or at least let his or her equity take care of the problem at no cost to the city. And once again, we don't have to bring matters to the city council as we do in the current case. Public nuisances are pretty self-evident. Notices would go out to them identifying those nuisances, the violations, and what it would take to cure them. And then only after many efforts to get voluntary compliance would I approach my director to seek a receivership. And then with the support of the city manager and city attorney, we would go to court. And ultimately, it's the court's decision whether it warrants approval or not. Case by case. Thank you. Any other questions?
Yes.
No, go sorry.
Go ahead.
You've been waiting. Go ahead.
I declare you the first.
Yeah, we're unusually polite here tonight with each other.
You're saying I'm not?
I understand that this is extreme measures for extreme neglect, and I appreciate that. And I think that it makes sense to me that it's a tool we need to have in our toolbox, but use it with great care, if at all. And I think you just answered my question, but can you go through explicitly with me one more time? Assuming I'm the property owner, what is the notification process? At what point do the courts get involved? And ultimately, who's the decider as to the appropriateness as to whether it would go into receivership?
Answering your last question first, the court has ultimate jurisdiction and authority to approve or deny the request for the order. The steps to get to that point, assuming you've ignored all my notices, courtesy notice, final notice, not so courtesy notice, my citations with fines that start at $100, go to $200, then $500 per violation, per occurrence, per day if necessary. And when you've shown that you're unwilling to meet all of those opportunities to voluntarily comply, then upon conference with management, we would determine whether or not a receivership should be sought, or in very unusual circumstances, and I've yet to do that in my last 4 years, would I recommend that we prosecute you for just refusing to follow the law. Okay. And a step before that would be to seek, with attorney's help, get an affidavit before the court justifying in very specific steps what we've done to try to get voluntary compliance, what is available that needs to be done, and then ask the court's indulgence to allow it to be done at the property owner's expense.
And in the case of the properties that we just looked at, are any or all of them at that extreme level where we would be seeking receivership from the courts at this point?
All of them, well, the ones that have been boarded up by the city, I've not noticed the property owners to do anything with that yet. I've been waiting for this opportunity to include them. But rather those who've been given notices, the one on Juanita, for example, there's two on Juanita. They've been fined, they've been noticed, they refuse, don't pay the fine. Even if they clean up the debris on the property, it's still in disrepair. Those are probably the first two I would take to the city attorney and say, here's all that we've tried to do. Do you have any other recommendations? And if not, ask for a warrant.
Okay, and my final question is, so let's assume the attorney agrees with your recommendation and we go to court seeking receivership. Who pays those court fees?
It's part of the super priority lien against the property to clean up the property and recover all costs. Those costs would include all of my time up to the point I first addressed the city attorney, and including his time and the cost of seeking the order.
Okay, so we would bill the receiver for
Yes.
those then? Okay.
And it sounds strange, but our money comes before Bank of America or anybody else who was previously in first place. That's why it's called a super priority loan. They step in front of the line to recover their monies first. If there's a default, the receiver and the city gets their money before anyone else.
And then, I'm sorry, last question of our city attorney. Do most cities keep this tool in their city toolbox?
I would say that some cities use it fairly aggressively, and other cities never. So there's a range. The bigger cities, I think, with certain law firms, are more aggressive. I would add one step. Because it would be fairly rare in our city, I would recommend that we go through the extra step of declaring a public nuisance after a public hearing before the city council and get specific direction upon our recommendation to go forward with that program and have authorization to actually file the application with the court.
So just to follow up on that, that would become part of city policy, which we would be adopting tonight?
Well, yes, we'd certainly just take that direction.
Okay. Just a clarification question. On the house where the gentleman was building an unpermitted garage.
Yes.
How would that work? Because you have the rest of the house that I'm sure he's occupying.
That's not an occupied dwelling. It's his purchase as investment property, and then it didn't go well for him.
Okay, so basically...
So there's no relocation there either. It would not affect his living arrangements because he lives in another city.
So that means that we would take over, fix up his property, and then if he wants to use it, he would have to pay back the loan. So we're basically rehabbing his property for him.
The ownership never changes. It's just that there's a lien placed in front of it to take care of the costs of bringing the property into compliance, and then the property is relinquished, if you will, the control over the property. In another community, I had a resident who was an heir of the original owner, deceased, and this heir was chemically altered and had many other problems in the community, but he liked to bring junk onto the property and destroy the neighborhood. Receiver went in, cleaned it up. 6 months later, he had it back. I retired. It could be that 6 months later, he's got it, full of junk again. But at least for the period of time that the residents were happy, their neighborhood was cleaned up at no cost to the city. It's clear to me that even though there's no council ordinance required, no specific direction required, there's no way that this code enforcement officer or these directors would go willy-nilly forward into this realm without making sure that the council would not be dissatisfied with our efforts. Thank you.
I have another question.
I'm sorry.
More questions. Maybe we should give him Floyd's equipment for hearing things. First of all, I'd like to say I don't think it's an option to do nothing on these properties. I think we have to protect the neighborhoods and we need to protect our city. My question is, you presented the current process, analogous to what we did with the weed abatement program, as being onerous and expensive to us.
Yes.
If we did the weed abatement type approach and declared, warned, mitigated, and then put a lien on the property and all things like that, would we have the option of going straight to demolition? Because some of these are clearly in need of demolition, and that would be much less expensive. And could we just, as a matter of law, without any contest, demolish these places and not even consider them for renovation and return? In lieu of this, because I'm trying to figure out, could we do this a lot less expensively without paying a lot of money to lawyers?
My first goal is to get voluntary compliance. Failing that, I want to get compliance, even if it's involuntary, without the city spending any money on a contractor. So yes, the summary abatement process includes the city spending money to demolish. The last one of which I'm aware occurred several years ago. I just ran across the file. City spent over $4,000, and nothing was done to recover the money. We now have, through your council action the last time I was before you, a cost recovery option that would let us go after that. So we're endeavoring to do that now. But my optimal goal would be not to spend any money at all.
Yeah, but like I said, that's not an option. It's not an option to do nothing. But what I'm saying, see, I'm probably a good public servant because I hate wasting other people's money more than I hate wasting my own. And everybody knows I don't waste my own. I'm wondering, would it be better for us to demolish the property at a cost to the city and then recoup it in the sale of the vacant land than to go through the expense of churning the property with massive lawyer and court fees and essentially wiping everything out? Do we have the option to go in and demolish?
Well, yes, you could. Our nuisance abatement ordinance does give us the authority to abate a public nuisance. We would have to go to court to get an abatement warrant to do that. We would have to pay all the cost of doing that for the contractor and so forth. Then we could impose a lien against the property. But we wouldn't be able to sell the property or recoup our funds. It would remain a lien until the property owner sold it or something else happened down the road. And that's the difference. The referee, not the referee, the receiver takes control of the property and puts the financing on the property to pay for everything. And so the city doesn't have to lay out those funds. The abatement may be appropriate if the costs are modest, as you were thinking, I believe. If the costs are great, then the city might be better off to have the cleanup funded through the equity in the property.
Yeah, so when something comes for a hearing for a public nuisance, we could opt for one option versus the other. We wouldn't be stuck with receivership. We could still have the option of doing it.
If the council would prefer to have these before them on an agenda as a public nuisance and then to seek whatever remedies are available to you, that's fine. What I'm proposing is that staff would take care of this without requiring the public notice. There's nothing that would happen without your knowledge, but it wouldn't require a public hearing to accomplish it. The other thing is, if I could just go back to your comment, I liked one of the things you said, and I didn't necessarily address it properly. The property I showed you on Juanita that's supposed to have been demolished, he agreed to demolish and just got sick or for whatever reason, his ignoring us for the last 2 years. That parcel is less than 50 feet wide, as are the two on either side of it. One of those is one I didn't show you pictures of because he did clean up the debris, but it's still unpaid citations in the amount of $7,000. So we got his attention, we got him to clean it up, but he hasn't paid his fines. The other parcel on the further east of the demolishable structures is just vacant except for some concrete that's from a foundation. If these properties were cleared at the property owner's expense, neither one could be properly developed as a standalone parcel because of lot requirements that exist in the city now. But together would make a great development across the street from the nice yellow house that's on the north side of Juanita in the same neighborhood. So it would enhance the city's efforts to beautify the community as well. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank the council.
So is the sum total of our commentary understood as proceed?
I just want kind of look at your opinion and see you want okay with. I'd be happy, like city attorney said, bring it back after have a public hearing for the public nuisance, have the property owner opportunity to come in front of all of you and say, yes, I can do it myself, or no, I refuse to do it, and then we proceed.
Yeah. Okay. Sounds reasonable.
So there's no action required on this. This is simply exploring.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. Item 13, request from SCAG to appoint a delegate. What does this entail?
This is every year the SCAG has a regional annual meetings, and they request that either city council or city manager attend the meetings. And this year it happened to be close by in Palm Desert. It's on May the 2nd to May the 3rd. And any volunteer. If not, I can go.
Sounds like you like doing this. I think we should force Dr. Lennart to go. It's
to do with transportation.
Penance for missing city council.
And it's similar to what the mayor has been dealing with at Sandbag. So, and this is the SCAG level, so you're welcome to. Or you can. It's Thursday and Friday.
Yeah, that would be a problem. Yeah. So you're appointed. Yeah, by acclamation. Okay. Demands register. This is the LAU part.
I'm sorry, but we have one item that my staff went order key from university, so I request that the city approve this one item that we purchased from the university.
Do I hear a motion to approve this item? It's a separate item, part of the demands character that involves
It's part of the
university.
demands register that's an expense paid to Loma Linda University, and I, in an overabundance of caution, seeing the way our local district attorney prosecutes politicians, have elected not to become one of his targets. So I'm backing out. If you choose to.
And this is $14. I'll take the risk.
Yes, please. It's so moved. Let's move on.
Okay, I'm back. I'm back. Yeah. Okay, reports of councilmen. If you guys have nothing, I have a comment, but go ahead.
I'd like to ask the city manager to share the good news he sent to me by email earlier last week.
Well, if you happen to exit the I-10 at Mountain View off-ramp today, you will see that our contractors start clearing and grubbing, which is remove all the weed and at the off-ramp. So they will do that for duration of 3 weeks. They will remove all the weed and remove the dirt, and then put in the hardscape, which is rocks and so forth. So on off-ramp and on-ramp on the south side of the freeway.
And we've been talking this evening about weed abatement and blight, and those on-ramps and off-ramps have been right up there with the best of the stuff we've been looking at. So I couldn't be happier. And the bonus on this is it finishes on my birthday, which is perfect. There's symmetry in that I appreciate.
Can we afford a cake?
Just a question. I had a couple of different people talk to me and ask me about water pressure. Is there any problems with water pressure in the city that
No, sir.
you know of? No. Okay.
Are they up on the hill?
Do they live up with you in the clouds?
Yeah. No, I should far enough down. I should get
You were fine.
I guess it was Stan. I'm just so used to having someone in that seat who lives high. Yeah.
Just a general announcement where hopefully some of the council members will attend the re-grand opening / ribbon cutting of the Barnes & Nobles at the Loma in the Market this coming Friday at 10 o'clock. It's sponsored by the Chamber of Commerce, but I just wanted to kind of extend the invitation to everyone in case they had, this coming Friday. Okay, well, I haven't seen it yet, but I'm excited that we're actually, adding more retailers to our town, and Barnes & Noble is a good retailer, and of course it's part of the bookstore, and they sell lots of good stuff, including Mac products.
You haven't been in there?
I have not.
Because there's a beautiful little Apple store in there.
I heard. I've seen part of it at some point. I when I go to my weekly ritual Apple pilgrimage, Oasis, whatever you call it, I go to the Victoria store.
Oh, well, I urge you to try out the Loma Linda store.
I will.
Yeah. And they're very helpful in there, too, and knowledgeable.
I would just like to draw everybody's attention to item number 9. I'm on a rampage to get rid of unnecessary restrictions in flow of traffic in the city of Loma Linda. And the latest victim is going to be the stop sign on Huron at Richardson Street. That was put in place many years ago, and there's a story that a former mayor lived up Richardson Street and wanted to have free flow out of the property, and so there's a stop sign to stop the more busy street to let a cul-de-sac empty without stopping, and I just thought that was a little bit funny, so the Traffic Safety Committee looked at it, and now we're approving the change. We're swapping the stop signs one direction and putting them on the other direction to allow the more busy street to flow without stopping.
Which is Huron?
Huron.
Yeah.
I don't go that way.
Yep, you better watch out for the dip. There's a pretty big dip there.
And the reason the prior mayor got the way that he or she wanted it, and now it's time to undo the mistake. The reason I'm bringing this up in reports of councilmen is because if all 6 people that are watching on the video, if you know of any stop sign that you just think is ridiculous, give us a call, because we've got hacksaw blades and will travel. We're going to cut them out if they're unnecessary. I had somebody comment about the one at Lawton and Hillcrest, and they said that it's the first time they've ever seen a city get rid of stop signs. And we've taken out about, 6? Yeah. So, if you,
We're down to 1.
I always end every one of these comments with a comparison with our sister city to the east that has the color of the stop sign in its name. And if you want that kind of obstruction to flow of your traffic, that's the place where you probably want to move, because they have lots of stop signs.
If I could, not to spoil the momentum you got, but we have a letter from that I think it's actually addressed to the city manager.
I already took care of that one too.
Okay, can you tell us what the follow-up on that is?
So there
was just for background, there was one complaint about the elimination of the stop sign on Lawton Avenue at Hillcrest.
Oh.
And that was somebody who lives on Lawton and was complaining about the fact that backing out of the property was difficult because of the speed of the traffic flowing by.
So what I did is I notify our sheriff to ask him to do more enforcement along Lawton. So be careful, don't speed down on Lawton.
I have noticed that they're out there now.
Yes, sir.
And you've notified the
Yes, I did.
citizen?
Yes, I did.
Did that meet her satisfaction?
Yes.
Okay, good.
And she's on my trail committees.
Yeah. So she's an active citizen. Yeah, we take the concerns seriously. But it is a fact that in the state of California, it is not permissible to place stop signs as a speed control device. And you have to use enforcement for speed control, or bumps in the road, or whatever else you want to come up with. Or if you're a modern developer, you just make your roads so narrow your car won't fit. Okay, now we have item 15. Are there any reports of officers first? Okay. Item 15 is the report. So,
yes, just as an informational item at this point. Currently, the majority of the cities in the East Valley, Loma Linda, Colton, Redlands, and actually Children's Hospital share. It's a fire safety education trailer. This is taken around to schools, safety fairs, the Children's Care Fair up on the campus mall, fairly heavily used, and it's many years old. It's somewhat dilapidated, and we've done some repairs and facelifts on it over the years. But the prevention officers from those cities have collaborated in an effort to submit a grant for that, to replace this trailer. Currently, there was an apportionment model that was recommended, in which each city would pay an apportionment of the matching funds based on our population. Our apportionment of what would be about a $175,000 trailer would be roughly $3,200. The city manager has given us some pre-approval to at least put our hat, put us in the grant with the other cities. The item would come back to you formally to complete, but was fairly confident that that's a direction to acquire a replacement that the council would consider. That apportionment is likely to go down. That model was based on the municipalities being involved, with the addition this time of this go-around of cities of Yucaipa and Highland, who have also used the trailer in the past, have also agreed to join this grant submission. But the Children's Hospital was not considered in that apportionment model. I think they may have picked up a complete matching last time through the Safe Kids Coalition, and they're considering that right now. So when this finally comes back to you, it'll likely be less, if any apportionment at all. So anyway, we're moving forward with that, and it should become as a formal item to you soon.
okay, thank you for that. And with that, the City Council is adjourned, and we'll move to our redevelopment successor agency. Are there any items to be added or deleted?
No, sir.
Would the public like to speak on any items not on the agenda? Seeing none, we'll move to the consent calendar. What's your pleasure?
I'll move it with the question. I'm having a hard time understanding the demands register. It's $1.1 million in vouchers. Those are, I guess, tax.
Bond repayments.
So we're just using it to pay back our bonds, basically. Is that what that is? This is on the successor agency, the demands register. It's $1.1 million.
Yeah, those are the debt service payments
Okay.
on the bond.
Thank you.
And I noticed the rather steep charge from Robinson Holdaway, $41. You cost 1/200th of the cost of the auditor. So I think we should give you more auditing work.
I hope you'll rescind your previous comments about excessive attorney's fees.
I mentioned the excellent members of your profession, but I didn't mention you specifically. Yes.
I'll second the motion.
Okay. Is there any opposition to that? Seeing none, then that's approved, and we're adjourned on the successor agency. Now we have our housing authority to deal with. Are there any items to be added or deleted there?
No, sir.
Would the public like to speak on the housing authority agenda items or non-agenda items? Seeing none, the consent calendar is available. Is there any discussion or opposition? Hearing none, it's approved. Are there any reports of members? Reports of officers?
Well, we have one closed session after this. On this.
Okay, then we will move to the closed session, and if you're interested, stick around, and we'll come out after the closed session and say, we'll report out any reportable actions, and we'll adjourn. But if you don't want to stay for that, we bid you adieu.